Hey folks, today I'm going to be showing you how I built my bike trailer. I've been wanting to do it for a while. It's kind of long overdue, but I think the main reason I never did it is because I don't have any video. I wasn't doing video at the time, but I did get lots of pictures of the process, and I think it was either for a website that I had at the time or it was for Facebook. I think it was mainly for Facebook, showing the process of it. So I got lots of content anyways. I don't know why, but for some reason I always start out making plans. And I've mentioned before that I don't follow plans, I just kind of design as I go. So I don't know why I do this, but I always do. I always start out with a plan, I never follow it. So I got lots of hand-drawn stuff, all the different parts that I was going to need. The only thing I knew for sure is it couldn't be more than 36 inches. As if it was any wider than that, it wouldn't fit through the gates and the rail trail. So that was the only thing I knew for sure. So the reason I built it is because in 2011 I lost my car and I didn't have any transportation anymore. And I didn't get a whole lot of money from the insurance company to replace the car with, so I ended up buying a new bike instead. My old bike was kind of falling apart until that's what I did. And in order to go shopping, some of the stuff that I buy I can't put in a backpack on my back. So I needed some kind of a trailer. So I come up with this idea. And I was going to make it out of aluminum so it's nice and light. I've never worked with aluminum before. I've tried steel. I'm not very good with steel. I'm still not, but I still have to use it sometimes. But no way of welding or anything like that. So anything I do, it's got to be all bolt together. So I had this idea in my head of how I was going to do it. But I bought the wheels from the bike shop here in town. It's a set of used wheels. And I was just kind of going to build off of that. So it turned out that the 20-inch wheels are perfect size because the deck of the trailer is at the right height for the hitch, and it worked out just fine. So doing this, I discovered when it comes to bike tires, 20 inches is not the rim size. It's actually the entire width, including the tire. So on car tires, or car wheels, the rim is the actual size. So if it's a 15-inch rim, they're called 15-inch wheels. It doesn't take into account the size of the tires. But on bike tires, the size of the tire is actually included in that. And just for information's sake, that's the way the Monsters are as well. Monster tires are 15-inch on the back and 13 on the front, and they're definitely not 15-inch rims on the back. That's pretty big. So it takes the tire into account as well with the actual diameter, which I thought was kind of interesting because I thought I'm used to car tires. I'm used to a 15-inch rim is a 15-inch rim, right? And whatever tire you put on after that. So I just assumed everything went by that, but apparently not. So that's one thing I learned from this project. And what's interesting is with this project, I even went as far as to do some designing on the computer and printed out hard copies of it. Like I said, I don't know why I do all this because I never follow my plans anyways. The only thing that was important with this whole thing is not wider than 36 inches. So it's a pretty good job though on designing everything, printing everything out, all the materials and stuff, but like I say, I wasn't going to be using it anyways, but I should know that by now. But when I do it, I plan on using it, but it just never works that way. For this project, I used 1.5 inch angle. Each side's 1.5 inch long, so it's the same length on each side. And if I remember correctly, they came in 8-foot lengths and 1.5 inch aluminum. 8-foot length of it was like $30. There was other 1 inch by 1 inch. I think it was 22 for an 8-foot length. So it wasn't cheap, and I knew it was going to cost me a bit to actually complete this, but it's something I needed to do, something I wanted to do. So first thing I did was I cut 2 pieces 36 inches wide. That's going to be the width of the trailer. So the basic frame is basically going to be a rectangle with wheels in it. So I needed a front part and a back part, and both of those would be 36 inches. So I cut those, and then I cut the parts that the wheels would attach to, and I really didn't have a specific size for those. I just went a little bit longer than the diameter of the wheel, so there's a little bit of space between the wheel and the front and the back. So just kind of going by eye with that. Next step was to cut the groove for the wheel axles, and I can't just put holes in because with everything bolted together, if I need to take the tire off to change a tube or something, then I wouldn't be able to get it out, so it had to be slots. So what I did was the 2 parts for each side, I clamped them together. That way the groove is in the exact same place on both, and that will keep the wheel pointing perfectly in line with the trailer itself, so they're not kind of pointed off in any different direction. So I got those clamped together nice and tightly, and I drilled a hole same size or same diameter as the axle on the wheels, and just kind of cut out the rest of it just to make a slot for the axles to actually slip into. Now I think this is the first project I've ever done that I actually put a lot of detail into and a lot of effort to get absolutely right. So anything I put together, I used a square and clamped the square in place to make sure nothing moved, just to make sure everything stays in line. I actually put a lot of effort into this one. And then I got the 2 parts together and clamped them together, drilled a hole in them, and stuck some bolts through. So like I say, I couldn't do any welding on this project because I didn't know how. So everything had to be bolted. So basically just started by bolting everything together. And did the same thing on both sides. And this will be the completed outer frame. This is the entire width of the trailer and the length of the actual basic part of it, I guess you could say. So once I got that done, I stuck the wheel in to match it up and get the alignment right for the inner part of, I don't even know what to call it, the axle brace maybe. And then once again I used the square to make sure everything's perfectly in line. Drilled the holes and bolted everything together, and that completes the basic frame. So put the wheels on, bolted them in tight, and that part's done. So just for a little added extra strength, I'm not sure if I had to do this or not, but I stuck some corner braces in, more bolts. So it's pretty strong. I showed, when I was showing the trailer in the garage, I showed that there's no movement. It flexes. I can wiggle it and it'll flex all over, but there's no movement. The joints don't move at all. And that's pretty much what I wanted. I wanted it to be as stable as it could. And I think I did a pretty good job. I might have kind of went a little overkill on the bolts, but the end result was worth it. And this next part is kind of my own unique design. I had nothing to go by except for the idea in my head. And I wanted the trailer tongue to be dead center in the trailer. If you buy a bike trailer in the store, the bar comes off the side and bolts to one of the wheel bolts on the back of the bike, and I don't like that at all. If you turn too far one direction, the bar is going to scrape your tire. So in this case, I wanted it right dead center, the way a normal trailer should be. So I started that by making a couple braces, and I cut, just guessed on the length, just nothing specific, and cut 2 45-degree angles in the aluminum, and left a little bit of extra on the one end, and extra part sticking out, and I stuck in the vise and bent to 45-degree angle, Did that on both sides, and checked it against the bike frame, which I know is square, and just made sure I got the 45-degree angles right. So I made 2 of those, and for the actual trailer tongue itself, I just used 2 lengths of the aluminum and bolted the 2 together to make kind of a C channel. So a little extra strength. Bolted them together, and they're not going to move. And for part of the tongue that's going to attach to the trailer, I put some corner braces on it, and that's how I'll be attaching it to the actual frame, using the corner braces. And bolted them in nice and tight. And then found the center of the frame and bolted them to the frame. And put the square on again to make sure the tongue is square with the frame itself. And keeping it in that position, put one of the corner braces on and clamped it onto it and bolted them in place. And I don't have any pictures of the actual bolts on them, but everything's bolted nice and tight. But there's no way to put a corner bracket on it, because being a 45-degree angle, it wasn't going to work. But it worked. It's so strong. I'm impressed with it. So there's the basic frame now complete, and I put a couple braces across the center just for added strength. Plus, if I have anything heavy on the trailer, it's got to have some kind of support in the middle of it. So at this point, the trailer is actually usable without doing any more with it, but I will be adding to the frame later, kind of putting kind of like a deck type thing on it. The actual hitch took me a little while to figure out. Now, I went through a hardware store, I went through Canadian Tire, and went through Walmart, looking at all the different things, trying to figure out what I could use. So eventually I found, I'm not sure what it's called, it's kind of like a tie-down point for pickup trucks. It's got a bolt that bolts through a hole, and then it's got screw holes in the top of the bolt that the actual loop part sticks through. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just basically what it is anyways. It's like a tie-down bolt, eye-bolt type thing for a pickup truck. So that's kind of what I finally went with. And the trailer side of it, I just used a U-bolt that went through this, and it was kind of bolted onto some bent steel that I would be attaching to the trailer's tongue. So at this point, I saw no reason to be removing the trailer from the bike, so it was going to be a permanent hitch. And if I needed to, I could always take the bolt out, or take the nut off the other end of the bolt. So it'd still be able to take it apart if I needed to. But that was my original idea, and it worked, but it just it would bind every once in a while. And you can see from this picture, there's not a whole lot of twists, left-right twist to it. So it was a good start, but it just wasn't a really, really good design. That's what it looked like on the end of the trailer, once everything was together and complete. So the little screw end there on the loop screws into the end of the bolt that will be bolted to the back of my bike once I get that part of it finished. So once I had the trailer pretty much done, I had to start figuring out how I was going to make a hitch on the bike. I had no plans whatsoever for this, no ideas. I just kind of decided to go with whatever I could. I still had the rack from my old bike, and I used the attachments for the top. I had no idea, any other idea of how I could attach it at the top, but that's what I started with, and just made some rails that went out to the back, a little bit past the tire, because the whole point of this was the hitch had to be right in the very center. So it's going to be sticking out, and I'm not exactly sure how stable it's going to be at this point, but if it needs some more support, then I'll figure it out once I get to that point. So I started with the little connections, and at the bottom I didn't know how to attach down there either, so I just got some pipe strapping, I wrapped it around the frame and stuck a bolt through it, and there's my anchor point. Surprisingly, this doesn't sound like it's all that strong, but it worked beautifully. So that part just kind of, in my mind, I'm thinking, what can I do for this? What can I do for that? And I just come up with some ideas and try something. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, try something else. At the back, there's a bunch of holes. I think the one I have the bolt in is actually for the rack itself, but the bolts that I'm using, they're all the same size. I can't remember what size it is, but 1/2 inch or something like that. But the hole wasn't quite big enough, so I just drilled it out so that it fit. And there's another anchor point. So I put the bottom rails on. It sticks out the back the same amount as the top. And it's anchored in 2 points up at the front. And the bar kind of sticks out a little bit on the side, so I wasn't sure what I was going to do about that. In the end, I cut a groove in the aluminum to make space for that bar to stick through. And it didn't take any of the structural integrity away. It didn't cause any problems. So I got the top ones bolted on, and then put a vertical piece. It's sticking down for a reason, because the hitch has to be a little bit lower than where it's sticking out. And did the same thing on both sides, and that's how it's coming together. So the actual hitch part, I wanted to be a little bit stronger than the aluminum, so I got 2 really strong angle brackets and bolted them together. And had a really big drill bit. Cost me, I don't remember how much it cost me now, but it was a big drill bit. And these nickel-plated brackets are very, very difficult to drill. They're very hard. So, attached them on at the height that the trailer needed, and give it some support to keep it from moving up and down. I put another support in behind, going upwards to the frame that's sticking out. And that seemed to work. Yeah. Put another piece across the top, bolted it together, and it's just to keep everything from moving. And that's how it looks complete. A little extra diagonal brace, and it was good and strong. And I could grab it and wiggle it really hard, and it barely moved at all. So here's the second part of the tie down bolts. This is the actual bolt part that attaches to whatever you're attaching it to. So like I say, in the back of a pickup, there's holes in the box, it bolts into that hole, and then the end of the bolt has got a threaded hole in it, and that's where the actual hitch screws into. So, and this is it complete. Screwed it in, and then tightened the nut so nothing's going to move. And it was a pretty crude design, but it actually worked quite well. And here's my bags attached. I just drilled holes through the bags. It's got hooks on the top that you would normally hang off the rack that's on there, but I don't have a rack, so it's hanging off the aluminum. And just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere, on the inside I got a couple bolts sticking through the bag, and it's bolted to the frame. And it served its purpose. It worked well. So the next step is to make a deck for the trailer. I don't remember if it was 4 feet long or 5 feet long. I know that the total length of the trailer from the very back to the hitch is 6 feet-ish. So, I don't remember exactly. But basically what I wanted to do was, I needed to make a box for it, but I wanted flatbed as well, so I come up with this idea of making it interchangeable, but I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to do that. So basically I just started with the basic frame, and I've got an extra brace across the front, and the reason for that was because I was going to have kind of a little storage box on the front of it, and then the rest of the trailer will be for cargo, whatever I'm doing. So that's why that extra brace is there. The problem, because I'm bolting everything together, everything's in a different height. So to make up for the difference, I just stuck a bunch of washers underneath just to keep everything level. And once I got that part complete, I stuck some reflective tape on the back, and at that point I declared it more or less complete and usable. Still had a lot of work to do, but that's just basically how I got to that part. And first thing I did was took it for a test drive, stuck a backpack on it with a bunch of stuff in it, and took a ride out to the Allen Park Conservation Area. And that's where I took this picture, sitting beside the pond, the trout pond there at the dock. So that was my maiden voyage. And I decided to experiment with something. I did want to put lights on it, but I'd had another application that would require electricity. So I decided to see if I could attach some batteries to it. So I made this frame that hung down underneath, and it had 2 lawn tractor batteries under there. And I was going to use them to power the lights and a water pump. And the reason for the water pump, because one of the things I wanted to do was I used to get water from the river for my garden. I had a flower garden, and they seemed to really love the water from the river. They thrived on it. So, especially in the springtime, you get all the water, all the fertilizer and stuff that's washing down out of the fields. And I come up with this idea because down in the floodplain area, the ferns down there, they were huge. They were like 6 feet tall. I've never seen ferns like that. So I kind of got the idea, well, if they like the river water, then my flowers might. And well, I was right about that. So I got this idea of having kind of a water tank and a little pump to pump water out of the river into this tank, and then take it home and pump the water into my garden. So that was kind of the second reason I wanted the batteries. And this I never got to the point where I was actually going to use them, but the experiment worked. The trailer was balanced. Yeah, there was no extra weight behind the wheels. There's no extra weight in the front. So they were perfectly centered, which impressed me first try. So it didn't really affect the trailer any, but they're just hanging down too far. So I couldn't drive over, much of anything that stuck up because it would hit this frame. So I ended up taking it off and never actually used it. But that was my idea of it anyways. Have it self-powered. So at this point, the trailer's not complete, but it is usable. And if I needed to use it for anything, like small things or whatever for shopping, I just get a Rubbermaid container and bungee cord it down. It wasn't going anywhere. And I put a lid on it so I could use it in the rain. It wouldn't make any difference. So I used it for a while. And then my body started rebelling. It didn't like me riding the bike so much. So at this point, my illness is still in its early stages, and it was gradually getting worse. And I didn't have a whole lot of problem at first riding a bike once in a while, but it just got to the point where it said, you can't do this anymore. So I'm thinking, okay, so I come up with this idea of making an adapter so I could hook it up to my roommate's scooter. Because on the back of the scooter, it's got the accessory port on excuse me. Got the accessory port on the back of the seat. So I discovered my 1-inch aluminum, or 1.5 inches. I don't remember now which one it is. It's either 1 inch or 1.5. But it'll fit in that slot perfectly. And then you tighten down the screw and it holds it. So I decided to use that. And put another one of those strong angle brackets on and drilled a hole in it, and the tie-down loops that I was talking about for the pickup trucks, they came in a package of 2, so I used the second one for it. And in this picture here you can see my second attempt at a hitch. This one actually worked. It's a, I'm not sure what it's called, but it's a hook. I found a winch line that had broken. Somebody obviously got their ATV stuck and tried pulling it out, and their winch broke because it had this hook and a whole bunch of cable laying around. The end of the cable was frayed, so obviously it broke. So I snagged it and took it home with me, and that's where this hook came from. So the problem is it's rounded, so I took my angle grinder and just ground a flat spot on it so I could mount it to the end of the hitch. And in order to attach it to my bike, I had to lift the back of the bike up so it could come in on an angle. And with the scooter, I just hook it onto the adapter first and then stick the adapter into the accessory port on the back of the scooter seat. And it worked perfectly. This was actually a better design than my original hitch. That, the problem is like you have to lift something up in order to attach it because it has to go in on a specific angle. But this worked, and my roommate liked the idea because when she wanted to go shopping, she could use it herself, and she did use it a few times. And of course, after a while, I started using my roommate's scooter more and more, and I decided rather than wearing hers down, I'll go get my own, and that's when I got the ES 950. Unfortunately, the seat on it was at a higher position than my roommate's scooter. So I put the adapter in it. The trailer is kind of sticking up at the front. It's not level anymore. Eventually I fixed that. I drilled a second hole in the angle bracket so I could just move the loop to whichever height that I needed for it, depending on which scooter I was using it for. So it came to a point where when I was helping Cody out, pulling the trailer with his papers, I ended up making a separate hitch on the ES 950 on the bumper. This is the one you're used to seeing. I just got a couple pieces of steel, flat bar steel. The bumper mount comes out and goes up, and there was just enough room in there to get the steel on the front and back of it, and I just put a U-bolt between or around each one, bolted it down, and it's held on. It's never come off. So I don't use my bike anymore, so I took the loop off of it and put it on the ES 950, and it's been on there ever since. I don't think it'll ever come off because it's rusted solid now. I don't think it'll ever unscrew. So that gave me the lower trailer hitch that I needed for the dump trailer, and he ended up getting a new dump trailer, and I helped him out. I paid for half of it, and in return he gave me his old one, and that's the one that I have today. So I had the option of using either trailer with the ES 950. I used a dump trailer on the bumper hitch and my bike trailer on the adapter. So I found my adapter frame. That's what it looks like. It goes into the accessory port on the back of the seat, and it slipped out a couple times. The bolt came loose, so I drilled holes in it. So you tighten the knob on the back of the seat, the bolt actually goes into the hole, so it's not going to slip out. So that hole right there is originally where this loop was, and that was for my roommate's scooter, the Shoprider. And this worked perfectly, but like I said, the seat on the ES 950 is up at a higher angle, so to compensate for that, I drilled a second hole and put that in there, so if I use this on the ES 950, the trailer is actually level because it's down further. And after I did that, I added this brace. This is new, just to keep this from bending, and this is actually pretty sturdy. It works quite well. So this is a good look at the... I still don't know what it's called. I just call it the loop. So I get this. I gotta set this down if I can. Find somewhere to put it. There we go. So ignoring this part here, it's like a bolt that goes through, and the nut goes on, and then this loop part of it. I can't do it with one hand. I've got it cranked down with vice grip so it doesn't come loose. But this part unscrews from the actual bolt itself. There's a hole in the bolt that's threaded, and this just screws right into that. So that's my adapter. I looked here originally because I was sure that's where it was. It was in this box underneath, so I was right about that. So unfortunately, with the Monster actually has that accessory port as well. You can kind of see it right there, but it's useless on here. Even without the stuff I put on the roll bar blocks it, and you can't use it. It's kind of pointless. So that's why I put the trailer hitch on myself, and that's what voided my warranty. Apparently you're not supposed to add accessories to your scooter. Well, how am I supposed to pull a trailer? Because they make trailers specifically for mobility scooters, and they're perfectly fine to use, but because I can't use it and have to use my own, warranty void. So I look at that now, and they're just avoiding the inevitable replacement parts because they know how unreliable this thing is, and it's going to cost them money. So avoid my warranty. Now I have to pay, right? That's how I see that. But I don't know. I did make a video. I didn't make a video of doing this, and I also didn't make any videos for my third and final hitch. This is just 2 pieces of flat steel bolted to the tongue. Wasn't sure if this was going to work because it's like a C channel, so I cranked them down pretty tight. And this is what works. This will work on my ES950 or on my Monster directly ES950 with the adapter. So for hinge pin, it's just a basic pin locking. So I need a key on it so nobody can disconnect it from my scooter when I'm not with it and take off with it. This is my third design, and it's the one that's most adaptable, works for everything. And it's similar to the dump trailer. I did make a video of this when I extended the trailer tongue. It's the same basic design, because there's the original trailer tongue, and it's got the part at the top, and it's got a hole in the actual tongue itself to create the 2 holes that the pin goes through. So I just kind of duplicated it when I extended the tongue. And if you haven't seen that video and you're interested how I extended it and cut my finger really bad in the process, I'll put a link in the description. I won't actually show it in this particular video, but I will put a link to it if you're interested. And as far as the wiring and the lights, I didn't do any kind of video on that either. Basically I got like a 1" by 1" angle plastic molding similar to the aluminum, but it's plastic, and that's what I mounted the lights to. And well, there really wasn't anywhere else. I didn't want to put them on the back because the back tends to scrape the ground if I hit a really steep turn. Plus, as you can see, when it's not being used, it gets stored vertically, so they'd get broken up pretty quick. So I didn't do any videos on that. And the other thing I didn't show the process of is this flatbed part here. I did make an extra frame for around the outside, and this is I've showed this before. This is just zip tied on. It's just a rectangular frame that goes over top of the existing frame, and that's what's holding this is just masonite, 1/4" masonite. And as you can see, it's kind of warped from the weather, but it does have support in the middle, so it's not going to fall through or anything. So this is my flatbed version. Then I was going to make a second one of these outer frames and make a box And it's possible I might still do that, because I do have the corrugated plastic that I was going to use for that, and I've used for other things. That alone, I think 10 sheets of that cost me $70. So it is quite possible that I might make a second one of these frames. This is only 1 inch. The actual trailer itself is made out of 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch. This is 1 inch, and I don't remember what I was going to say, but it's usable. And I just put these, I can't even remember what they're called. I'll just call them steel straps with holes in them. I put them along just to give something to hook the bungee cords into. Yeah, I mentioned before, it's good and strong. It sways. It does have a wiggle to it, but as far as the connections go, there's no motion whatsoever. These connections do not move. It's just the frame itself. It kind of wiggles a bit, so there's got a little bit of flex to it. But it's perfect. It works exactly the way I wanted. And I don't think I showed a close-up of the wheels actually in their, or the axles in their slots. So it's just stick it in and bolt it. So if I get a flat tire, instead of just having holes where I can't remove the wheels, I put slots in. So if I get a flat tire and I need to pull it out, I just slide it out of the slot, loosen the nuts up and slide it out of the slot. So it's worked well. I've had this since 2011 now. 9 years. 9.5 years, I think. And it's just still working perfect. I've never had a flat tire. These do get low. They don't hold their air pressure. But I don't mind. Yeah, this one's really low. I don't mind that, because if I have a heavy load on it, it just kind of keeps it from bouncing too much. Bounces a lot when it's empty, but so I don't worry about it too much. Unless it's going to be a super heavy load, then I'll put some air in, but other than that, it works perfect. I'm very impressed by the way it turned out, and I learned from this that I'm actually pretty good with aluminum. I prefer to work with aluminum over wood, and I prefer to work with aluminum over steel. I think the main reason is because it's easier to cut, it's easier to drill, it's just easier to work with, and bending, it's just so much easier, and I'm impressed. I'm really impressed with how it worked out. So that's my trailer build. Yeah, that's how I made it, and enjoying the use of to this day.